Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Stay quiet, friend. Lila sank into the couch, the flickering glow of the TV screen illuminating the shadows that loomed the darkened room. She had chosen a silly rom-com, hoping to distract herself. But the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Every creak of the old house made her jump, and the shadows in the corners seemed to whisper her name in a language she couldn't understand. It was late, and her roommate Clara was working on her thesis upstairs. But Lila couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't the only ones in the home. An uneasy tension coiled in her stomach, forcing her to triple-check behind each door, under the couch, and even peered behind the shoe rack, half expecting to find something or someone hiding within. She ducked below the kitchen counters, her fingers feeling for a butcher's knife. Her heart sank when she felt the empty spot in the knife rack. It was missing. The chill creeping up her spine told her that whatever was happening was more than just her imagination. She glanced toward the back door, where the moonlight shimmered through the glass panes, casting eerie reflections that danced on the walls. A sudden gust of wind rattled the bay window, sending a shiver through her. Something was off. With a tentative step, she approached the back door, feeling the cold metal handle beneath her palm. The moment she unlocked it, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The sound startled her, and she snatched it up, her pulse quickening at the sight of Clara's name. "Did you hear that?" the message read. A cold dread settled over her, crawling beneath her skin as the unease that had settled over her intensified. What could Clara possibly be hearing? She typed back, "Hear what?" but hesitated, glancing down the hallway that led to the stairs. The dim light from the TV cast erratic shadows that flickered and danced, and for a fleeting moment, Lila thought she saw something move behind the curtains. Her breath hitched, a primal instinct warning her that she was not alone. Maybe it was just the movie messing with her mind, but the feeling of being watched pressed heavier on her chest. Another message chimed in. "I think someone's outside." Panic surged through Lila's veins, prickling her skin. She stood frozen for a moment, weighing her options. Should she check the back door or run upstairs to her roommate? Clara's words echoed in her mind. Why would she think someone was outside? How could she guess that? Why is she being so casual about it? "Are you sure?" Lila typed back, her fingers trembling. "Just stay quiet," Clara replied. "I'll call you when I'm sure." A shiver ran down Lila's spine. Her instincts screamed at her to call the police, but fear held her in place. The silence grew oppressive, and she could hear the faint sound of something dragging from above. Without thinking, she moved to the back door, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. As she reached for the handle, a scream erupted from upstairs, a raw, piercing wail that silenced the night. It was Clara's voice. Adrenaline propelled Lila forward as she bolted toward the staircase, her heart hammering in her chest. "Clara!" she yelled, bounding up the steps 2 at a time. The hallway stretched out before her, dark and foreboding, thick with an air of dread. "Clara!" she shouted again, panic clawing at her throat. The scream had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that felt like a warning. When she reached Clara's door, her hand trembled as she tried to push it open. It was locked. Why was it locked? Lila fumbled for her spare key, forcing the door open. The room was empty, save for the dim glow of Clara's laptop on the desk. Papers were strewn about, books toppled over, and the window was wide open, allowing a chilling breeze to sweep through the room. Lila stepped inside, her heart racing. "Clara," Lila called softly, her voice just above a whisper. "Where are you?" Suddenly, she heard a soft rustling from the bathroom. Her breath caught, and fear settled like a stone in her stomach as she approached, each step feeling heavier than the last. She reached for the door, her mind racing with images of Clara being attacked. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the handle, glancing back at the open window that seemed to beckon her to escape. Then her phone buzzed again, illuminating the screen with another message from her roommate. "Don't come in." Lila's heart sank, and a sense of dread washed over her. The message was sent from Clara's phone, but something felt wrong. "Are you okay?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The rustling from the bathroom stopped abruptly, replaced by a suffocating silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. Lila took a step back, cold sweat prickling her skin. She felt trapped. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she couldn't leave Clara. With trembling hands, she yanked open the bathroom door. Clara stood there, her eyes went-mad and wild, blood staining her nightgown, the crimson liquid soaking into her hair like a macabre halo. In the bathtub, a body lay motionless, limbs grotesquely scattered like a puzzle, arms and legs discarded beside the sink. The young woman's lifeless eyes stared vacantly at the ceiling, unseeing. Lila could barely make out the limb hanging from Clara's hand, for in the other was a knife, glistening in the remnants of her victim. Lila froze, her mouth dry and her mind reeling. The air thickened with a metallic tang, and she could feel her lungs begging for air. "Clara," her voice cracked, trembling as violently as her body was. "What have you done?" Clara slowly turned her head. A strange, twisted smile creeping across her lips, glistening with the blood that stained her face. "You said you didn't hear anything," she said, her voice cold and deliberate. "You lied." "I didn't," Lila began, only to be cut off. "You lied," Clara repeated, her tone sharp, cutting through the air like the blade in her hand. "You need to stay quiet, friend, and I'll make sure you never lie again." The door behind Lila slammed shut, sealing her inside the suffocating darkness. Fear surged through her as Clara advanced, the knife glinting ominously in the dim light. "Clara, please." Lila's plea faded into a whimper, the weight of impending dread crushing her. Without warning, Clara lunged forward, the blade slicing through the air with a cruel precision. Pain exploded in Lila's mouth, and she gasped, trying to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the metallic taste of blood. As Clara withdrew the knife, Lila felt a sudden emptiness. Her tongue, her voice, her very essence slipped from her mouth and fell to the floor with a sickening thud. Clara's eyes gleamed with a wild delight as she leaned closer, whispering words that curled around Lila's mind like smoke. "Now you'll stay quiet," Clara said, her voice low and dripping with satisfaction. "No more lies, no more noise." The door behind Lila slammed shut, the weight of darkness closing in, silencing her voice and sealing her fate. Swing a sparrow on a string. Angela opened her eyes to a new day, not knowing if it were morning. There were no windows in her room, and it could have been the middle of the afternoon, or even midnight. She heard no sounds except her own breathing, and when she awoke, she inhaled and exhaled heavily, as if she had just completed a marathon race instead of having slept for hours. Perhaps she had slept for days. She had stopped wondering about time months ago. Now she simply slept for as long as she was able, then stayed awake for as long as was necessary. She knew she would have to eat, that they would soon be coming with food, and had she felt stronger, she might have spat it back at them, as she had done when they first brought her here. But she had swallowed that rage a long time ago. Now, Angela ate whatever morsels they gave her, and recently she had to restrain herself from thanking them. She feared the day might come when she would feel grateful that they had allowed her to live, when she might find herself smiling at them as if she understood and accepted the perfect correctness of her captivity. She looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror above the sink. Although her hair was stringy and unwashed, she remembered how golden it had shimmered in the sun. Her face was still quite pretty, and once she had heard one guard tell another he had never seen eyes quite that blue. The other whispered what a pity it was. If only she had a piece of paper a pen, even a crayon. Maybe this time she would show them that she could create something useful and lasting that mattered to them, something that in turn would make her matter. When Angela had first arrived, they had eagerly granted the request of the 18-year-old girl and waited to see what gifts her imagination might offer them. She had succeeded only in producing a few formless scrawls that they said were not art, and some rhymeless gibberish that they told her was not poetry. They took away the paper, the pens, and the paintbrushes, and not long ago, the tall blonde guard, who wore the keys around his neck, had asked her if she might like to sing. Any tune would do, he told her. Please, oh please, let me try, Angela had begged. The next day, he brought to her room a small cassette recorder with a blank tape. Perhaps we will find the songbird in you, where we were unable to find the artist. Sing, and we promise to listen, he assured her. For days, Angela sang alone in her room, remembering what her mother had sung to her many years ago. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. A week later, she handed the cassette to the man with the keys and simply said, "Please." He stuffed the tape into his pocket and left without a word. The next day, the guard sat alongside her bed and informed her that he and the others had decided that she was no songbird. For a moment, his words had sounded like an apology. She knew she would never see the tall guard again. The wasted papers that Angela had filled with nonsense, and the inarticulate squawks she had tried to pass off as music, had convinced them that further efforts on their part would be foolish. From that day forward, the guards who silently delivered her food seemed unwilling to even look at her. Angela heard the key slip into the lock on the other side of the heavy door. She no longer pretended to be asleep when they came, because they did not care whether she were sleeping or awake. One of them always waited outside as the other entered. She heard the heavy jingle of keys and looked up. The keys were around the guard's neck. "You," she said. But the word was only a statement of fact, not sparked with the warmth that accompanies the recognition of a familiar face. Once uttered, the word sounded idiotic. "Yes," he answered, closing the door behind him. He did not look at her as he set the tray of food on the stand alongside her bed. She had expected no further conversation, and when he spoke again, his words startled her. "They told me to say the other guard had caught a flu." He pulled up the small wooden chair and sat, although the chair was too small, and he seemed not to know whether to fold his legs. "There is no flu. They wanted us to talk." His statement was ludicrous. She had not had a conversation with him in months, and those few she remembered had been pitifully brief and one-sided. "I don't understand," she said, as she selected a small bread crust on her tray. She had learned to keep her responses short, for the guards tired of her quickly. "I'd like to know about God," he said, as if this were meant as an answer. "Tell me how you feel about God. Tell me about your religion, your beliefs." "I have no belief in God. I have no religion." "Don't you have some sort of records about that?" She felt immediately sorry she had asked, but the guard ignored the question anyway. He fidgeted in the small chair. "You're an atheist, then? Or an agnostic? You have opinions regarding God's existence, or the lack of it?" He sounded almost hopeful. "I'm an apathist. I don't much think about it," she answered as she nibbled at the crust. She picked up a slab of egg yolk with her left hand, ignoring the silverware, leaned her head back, and dropped the yolk into her mouth. Her response oddly pleased him, although he did not smile. "An apathist? That was a joke you just said. Admittedly, not a very good one, but it was a joke. Then you have a sense of humor. Tell me another joke." Angela looked hard at the man, not certain about how earnest her guard's question was. "A joke? You mean, like, why did the chicken cross the road?" The absurdity of her question seemed to increase the guard's excitement. "Yes. Yes. Tell me, why did the chicken cross the road?" There was anticipation in his voice, as if he sincerely were interested in the chicken's intentions. And when he leaned toward Angela for her response, his face revealed the hint of a smile. "Perhaps the chicken was an apathist," she said. The guard's smile disappeared as quickly as if it were erased. "That isn't funny. I'm sorry, but that isn't funny at all." His tone became flat, expressionless. He sounded like a man keeping some kind of score. No points for humor. "Sorry. Next category. Can we talk politics?" he asked. "No. Sociology, science, history, law, philosophy." His questions now had become a formality, a checklist to be completed, filed, and forgotten. "No. No. No. No." Although Angela could not remember ever having had a discussion this long during her stay here, she wanted this conversation to end. "Perhaps I could tell you why the philosopher crossed the road?" "No, I guess you're right. That wasn't very funny either. I suppose you'll be leaving now." Her question had anticipated his next words. The tall guard rose from the chair with difficulty, trying to maintain his dignity when he could not get up with his first attempt. "I have one more question for you, Angela," he said. He had never called her by her name before, and his doing so struck her as odd. He walked to the foot of her bed and turned toward her. "Do you know why you are here?" He asked this without malice or emotion, with only the desire to know her answer, as he had wanted to know about songbirds and chickens. I'm here because you see me as a useless bird." Having said the words, she knew they had always been on her tongue, waiting to be spoken. "I beg your pardon. You know, the sparrow who can no longer fly becomes useless to the other sparrows, a burden to them. I've broken my wing, isn't that right? And the flock has no further need of me." "I'm impressed," the guard answered. "That is quite a creative analogy from one who knows so little of creativity." He sat on the edge of the bed and moved close to Angela, as if to reveal a secret. Instead, he reached under the blanket and grabbed hold of her right hand, yanking it out from where she had kept it hidden. He held her arm straight up, and the pain caused her to wince. "But this isn't exactly a broken wing, is it, Angela? It's a wilted arm, a useless limb. It is not pleasant to look at. It serves no function, and it belongs to you. It is you." The words came in furious bursts now, like machine gun pellets, and he shook her withered limb as he spoke. "You see yourself as a wounded sparrow, do you? What happens if we take that sparrow and tie her leg to a string and swing her around in circles in a desperate attempt to make her fly? She struggles against hope to use her wings, her useless wings. And meanwhile, we swing her around and around and around, wasting our energy, wasting our time. And in the end, when we stop swinging her, she comes crashing down to earth anyway. Our time has been wasted. Her hopes have been destroyed. What is the point? Why even bother?" He let go of her arm, allowing it to drop. For a moment, Angela stared at the shrunken arm as if it were a foreign thing that did not belong in the bed with her. She spoke without removing her eyes from it. "A sparrow who can no longer fly can sing. And if she can't sing, she can still feel, can still love?" The guard interrupted. "That's exactly right, Angela. We asked this sparrow to sing, and she could not. But we realized she may be capable of love. The kind of love that could only result in frustration for her. Because the real question is she capable of being loved? Do the words she writes encourage love? Does her beauty or intellect in any way inspire it? It is unlikely that anyone would even try to love her because of that hideous limb. Not that all physical impediments are repulsive. Perhaps if she were only blind. Stop. Please, stop," Angela pleaded. Her brief taste of defiance had made her want to gag. "You want to cover your ears, don't you? You want to block out the words, make me go away. Maybe you would even like to strike me," he continued. "But you can't do it, can you? That limb just lies there like a dead weight. Do you see my point? I have my other arm, whose only function is to hide its companion. No, Angela, I'm sorry, but the time has come for us to stop swinging the Sparrow's string." His anger slowly dissolved, and he fell silent for a moment. He attempted to hold her wilted hand in his, but she pulled it away. Instead, he took her other hand. "But first, I have something I want to show you. Something you need to see." He sat on the bed and placed her fingers on his left leg below the knee. "Rub your hand along my leg, Angela. Does the calf feel peculiar to you?" "Congenital defect," they called it. Like they called yours. The leg is gone, at least from the knee down. Amazing what they can do with prosthetics today. But you see, I have my particular talents. I happen to be quite good at drawing people out, at enabling them to find a way to compensate for their physical shortcomings. And I can be quite decisive when called upon to make the kind of decisions that others would find distasteful. No one ever asked me to sing or to fly. But when they came for me, I simply told them what I could do. Angela struggled to pull her hand free as her anger rose inside her like hot bile. But you also decide who is to be exterminated. You decide who the state no longer regards as useful. What gives you the right? This gives me the right," he shouted, his breath hot on her face as he tapped her hand on the hard wood of his prosthetic leg. "This has forced me to find my usefulness to others, just as your pathetic limb has forced you to admit that you have none. And I have no intention of relinquishing my usefulness by allowing you to continue your hollow existence. I refuse not to matter." The guard's renewed anger seemed to embarrass him, and he turned away from Angela. He ran his fingers through his blonde hair in an attempt to collect himself. And when he again looked down at his leg, he noticed that Angela's hand was grasping it. Angela knew he had been unaware of her touch until he had looked. When his eyes locked with hers, her mouth curled in a bitter smile. "I feel this," she said, as she ran the tiny hand of the wilted arm along his wooden leg. "I feel this with both of my hands, even the one you call useless. Tell me what you feel when I touch you. Does this prosthetic device extend all the way to your heart?" Angela tapped on the artificial limb as if she were expecting a reflexive kick. "A curious question," he answered. "You might have made a fine idealist if you had believed in God." She moved close to his face and whispered, "To get to the other side, that is why a chicken would cross the road, isn't it?" He paused for a moment to look at her. "Such blue eyes," he said. "Such exquisitely beautiful blue eyes." He called for the guards to take her, and within moments, 3 entered the room, and another 2 waited by the doorway. She presented no struggle and went quietly with them. She wondered as they walked if one of them would take her hand. Subconscious convictions. They say in the moment of tragedy, time slows down. During those precious seconds, the mind accelerates. Your surroundings are a blur and disappear as your attention turns inward. You consider the events that led you to this point and what you could or should have done different. You consider who this will affect. You're suddenly acutely aware of every regret you have, things you wish you had done, or words you wish you had said to people you may never see again. What they don't tell you is that during this time of reflection, those thoughts don't matter. The steps that led you to this point have already been taken. You cannot change the past, and now must deal with whatever comes as a consequence of your own actions. But what if those thoughts did matter? I'm going to lose my job. That was the first thought that raced through my mind as I watched the man pull a gun from beneath his baggy jacket. The same man I had passed through security only minutes before. This was my first day on the job, and I was already going to lose it. The years I spent in college, scrounging for food and borrowing my friends' couches and car seats just to have a place to sleep. The loans I took from friends, family, and disreputable sources. None of that mattered anymore, as the fruit of my hard-earned labor was going to sour and rot on the very first day. The moment the glint of his pistol caught my attention, my hand was already reflexively reaching for my own holster. In the mere moment it took to draw my gun and form the words on my tongue for the man to drop his weapon, I was presented with a choice. Do I fire at the man whose own gun is pointed at the young woman behind the desk? Or do I wait and try to talk him down? If I hesitate, he could kill the woman before I fire. Or I could fire first, not giving him the chance to stand down. What if the gun was fake, and this was just an attempt at intimidation? Does this scenario meet the requirements for the rules of engagement? With my decision made, I shout for the man to put down the gun. Before the last word had fled from my mouth, an explosive sound that will, from that moment on, forever haunt my waking moments rings out. I made the wrong judgment. The man pulled the trigger. Time continues to crawl by as the young woman's body drops to the ground, red misting the air and painting the wall behind her as she crumples out of sight behind the desk. Seemingly to compensate for its slowed pace, time then speeds up. People scream and drop to the ground. A mother flings herself over her child. An elderly man clutches his chest and faints. I have little recollection of what follows. I'm sure police arrive and subdue the man, as I suddenly find myself sitting outside on the curb. Uniformed officers question me. I'm not sure what answers I give them. All I can do is stare at their holstered guns. 3 seconds. That was all the time it took for the man to pull his weapon and end a life. Those 3 seconds play on repeat over and over. I lose my job due to my own negligence. If I had followed proper procedure, I would have found the man's gun as he came through security. Out a job, and with a permanent black mark on my record, my degree and certifications become nothing more than useless pieces of paper. My brand new car I financed is repossessed. I return to couch surfing and lending in order to get through each day. Loud sounds now terrify me. The bang of a car door closing has me reflexively reaching for a sidearm that isn't there, only for nausea to rise at the mere thought of a weapon. Red mist and a body crumbling to the ground. It only took 3 seconds for that man to pull his pistol and kill. I can no longer make decisions for myself. I fear that whatever choice I make will be the wrong one, somehow causing another life to end. Second-guessing every move I make completely overwhelms my day-to-day actions. I cannot help but spiral within my own tortured thoughts to the point where I am too terrified to even move. It only took 3 seconds. The instant the man pulled the gun from his jacket, instinct led me to grab my son, push him to the tile floor, and cover his small body with my own. The only thought racing through my mind was his protection. Having only recently lost his father, I couldn't fathom losing Evan as well. A spray of red. The body of a young woman falling to the floor. The thud of her body colliding with tile echoing in my head. What if that had been Evan? What if he were older and the one working behind the desk when someone decided that they would end his life? Who would have protected him if I wasn't here? The security guard by the door, frozen with his gun raised, solidifies my resolve that no one can protect Evan like I can. It takes 3 police officers to pry me from my son's protection. Only after several reassurances that the gunman has been subdued and that we are safe am I willing to detach myself from Evan. Sweeping my sobbing 4-year-old into my arms, I hold him close as I provide the police with my statement, receive the okay from medical personnel to leave, and speed the safety of our small home. That could have been Evan standing behind the counter. No one can protect him like I can. With school shootings, a very real possibility. I pull Evan out of school just in case. I find a new job and that will allow me to work from home while homeschooling at the same time. Groceries are delivered to the house. Contact-free, of course. The only times I find myself not being able to avoid leaving the safety of our home are for regular visits to the doctor's office. I put these off for as long as I can without risking Evan's health. Every individual we pass is a threat, as who knows what weapons they carry. hidden beneath their clothing. Who knows what intentions they may have, or when they might decide to take their frustrations out on my innocent child. A local news broadcast covers the story of an injured criminal waking during surgery and attacking the caretakers and 2 bystanders. What if Evan and I had been there for an appointment? Even the hospitals weren't safe anymore. I called and canceled Evan's upcoming checkup. The doctor's office called at least once a day for a week straight to reschedule Evan's appointment. I let every call ring to voicemail. I know what is best for Evan. No one can protect him like I can. The phone calls eventually stop. The following week, 2 police officers arrive at our house, claiming the hospital staff called, asking for them to ensure we were okay. I reiterate through the closed door that all is well, but I refuse to open my home to them. I can see from the window the weapons they carry. What if they are not really police officers? What if they are here to hurt Evan? The next day, the police return with a woman dressed in a pantsuit and claiming to be from Child Protective Services. I refuse them entry and tell Evan to hide in his room. The woman claims that she is worried for my son's well-being and begs me to open the door. She doesn't have to worry about Evan. That is my job. Only I can protect him. They took Evan from me. They came in force, showing me documents that mean nothing to me as I sit handcuffed on my own couch. They claim I am not mentally fit to take care of my own son, as if they know anything about me or the dangers the outside world presents to my innocent child. I try to get them to understand that he needs me, that only I can protect him. Why can't they understand? They tell me I can argue my case in court. Why does no one understand? How can no one see how dangerous the world is? It only takes one man with a gun deciding to end a life. No one can protect Evan like I can. The customer service smile I have plastered on my face falls away as the man across the desk from me reaches beneath his jacket and pulls free a pistol. Despite the situation, I find myself surprised by the condition of the gun. My father was an avid weapon collector, and, as his only child, I was subjected to hours of instruction on all topics involving firearms. The man's gun isn't anything special, and is a brand that most households have stashed away somewhere for home defense. What caught my attention was the poor condition of the weapon. Scuffs and scratches cover most of the surface, and bare metal glints through gouged paint and texture. Wherever this man had obtained the gun from, there was a good chance it was either stolen or sold illegally. By the time the last remnants of my smile disappear, and my quick analysis of the man's pistol ends, I realize too late that I am the target of his aggression. Raised by a gun enthusiast, I thought I had seen them from every angle. I realized then that never have I stared down the barrel of one. It was a sight immediately burned into my mind, and one I never wanted to see again. I watch in slow motion as the muscles just under the skin of the man's hands tense, and his finger begin to pull the trigger. I can't help but think with irony that I won't have to worry about living with that fear. Silence follows the explosion of a firing pistol. The scene before me is familiar, though I can't determine why or how. I stand before a young woman, a waist-high desk, the only barrier between us. My right hand grips the cold, unfamiliar metal of the pistol I purchased from a stranger earlier this morning. I stare down the top of the gun at the young woman. She seems more interested in the details of the gun rather than the fact that it is aimed directly at her. There is something familiar about this woman, though I am sure I have never met her before. An irritating itch nags in the back of my mind that something here isn't right. I have been here before, but where am I? I want to turn and take in my surroundings, but am unable to move anything other than my eyes. Time seems to have slowed to a near pause. Glancing at the surface of the desk, I notice a stack of credit card flyers. Oh, that's right. I'm at a bank. One of the few left that actually handle cash instead of digital currency. Why am I at the bank? The memories come slowly, as though I am recollecting them through a vat of honey. The images are hazy at first, but slowly become clearer. I am desperate. The company I worked at collapsed due to fraud. As an accounting associate, I was one of the prime suspects in the case. It has been 2 years since I was accused as an accomplice, and the investigation is still ongoing. In those 2 years, my entire life fell apart. My fiancée left me, taking the word of the media over the man she planned to marry. She took our unborn child with her, refusing to allow me any part in the child's life. Do the investigation. I couldn't find a job. I lost my fiancé, child, and career. I lost all reason to continue to try. All I have left is a roof over my head, and even that will be gone soon, unless I do something. Robbing the bank wasn't a thought-out plan, but rather a decision made in desperation. Why had I thought this would be a good idea? I've never done anything like this before. This isn't me. Who have I become? The eyes of the woman before me begin to widen as she realizes she is staring down the barrel of my gun. Realization, surprise, fear, and then acceptance cross her features within a heartbeat. My hand tenses, my index finger beginning to pull the trigger. Wait, I've been here before. I've done this before. I've killed this woman already. Why am I doing this? For money? Is this really how far I have fallen? Would I really consider killing a woman for whatever change she might have in the drawer? Wait. No. I have already considered this. In fact, I have already done it. I am staring down the sights of my gun into the eyes of a dead woman. That is why she is familiar to me. I know I've killed her, but I don't remember what happened afterwards. Was I arrested? Was I shot? Glancing to my right, I notice a woman in the process of throwing herself over a young boy. Her son, Evan. Evan? Why do I know the boy's name? That isn't all I know. I know that the mother will be so scarred from my actions that she will hide her child away from the world, paranoid and plagued by the idea of some stranger hurting the only family she had left. Evan will spend the rest of his childhood in the foster care system. I've never met them before, so why do I know this? I shift my attention to my left, where a young security guard points his own firearm in my direction, his mouth open in a silent shout. I can see the fear and indecision wrought into his features. He will lose his job and any chance of a healthy life due to my actions today. Finally, I look back to the woman before me. She loses her life because of me. These are my victims. I can see the consequences these innocent bystanders will spend the remainder of their lives trying to cope with. All because I was desperate to pay my rent. I don't want this. I don't want to kill this young woman who has done nothing to wrong me. I don't want to cause the security guard to spend the rest of his life terrified of strangers and loud noises. I don't want Evan to grow up without his mother. My hand relaxes, and the gun soundlessly clatters to the ground before everything fades to black. Looking up from the report scrolling across his tablet, Jared smiled at his supervisor, Dr. Daniels, who had just entered the lab. "Good afternoon, doctor." The subject passed on the first run. His remorse caused a shift in his subconscious, and he dropped the gun before killing the woman this time. Dr. Daniels nodded, a bit of the ever-present tension in his shoulders relaxing. "That is good. Pull him out of the simulator and send the report to the recovery team. With luck, he'll be eligible for reintegration within the next year or so." After receiving the affirmative from his associate, Dr. Daniels headed for the door, sparing one last glance at the man lying on the bed, connected to the simulator unit. The device was revolutionary to solving overcrowding within the municipal system. Based on their progress with therapists and reports provided by behavioral specialists, qualified convicts are removed from their cells and transferred to one of a few facilities housing advanced neurological simulators. Rather than spend years within a cell comprised of bars and mortar, they are instead imprisoned within the walls of their own subconscious. They are then subjected to relive the events of the crime they committed, as well as experience firsthand the impact their misconduct left on their victims. The results were astounding, proving that remorse and guilt, if stressed on a deeply subconscious level, could change the morality of an individual. Rather than spend the remainder of their lives behind bars, these ex-convicts would receive a second chance. Depending on their results after undergoing intense therapy, they would be allowed to reintegrate into a controlled section of society, a sector that was developed specifically for these individuals. They would not be allowed to return to the public, as retribution is still demanded for their actions. They would, however, be provided the opportunity to work in their chosen profession, earn a wage, and make something better of themselves while serving out the remainder of their sentence. Tearing his gaze from the man lying in the hospital bed, Dr. Daniels stepped out of the room and headed for the next lab, Resurgence, to suggestion of domestic violence, general violence, and child abuse may cause offense. In the darkness of oblivion, now and as forever, swaths and waves of misery wash over me, disembodied, immutable and adrift. I should be at peace after all of this time on my own. But the sounds of suffering and pain continue to assault me, as they have done since I was delivered from one prison to another, tethered by the constraints of many others. Breathless, urgent cries like the bleating of sheep being slaughtered, high-pitched, keening wails like those of the wind as it peels itself apart, traversing caverns, tortured, lingering mewls like that of rolling thunder, spidering across the land as it creeps closer, wolf-like howls, ass-like brays, child-like screams, incessant, never-ending, compounding, tormented peals of agony that consume all opposing sounds, of laughter and happiness, exaltation and joy, sounds more pleasing to my phantom ears that I have lost the ability to focus on as I endure relentless grief, alone in the dark forever, and I cannot take it anymore. Floating in this murky abyss, weightless, shapeless, my essence comprised of thought and thought alone, a suffocating river of suppressive shadows drags me on, carrying me through the bottomless mire like a tumbling avalanche of tar as I drop my defenses and commit to the cries of the dying, cries that break like waves crashing down on me from every direction, threatening to drag me under and smother me in swells of black bile, like the desperate wails of a girl bawling in terror as an angered, drunken male calls her a waste, a drain, a worthless piece of shit like her mother, the grief-stricken sobs of a boy, begging for forgiveness as a female voice of authority, dripping with sadistic glee, tells him he's a sinner and must pay. The heart-rending shrieks of a woman, each one accompanied by a bellow of rage and a slap, thud, crack, whump, bang, the weakened pleas of a male, begging for release from the suffering he has been kept in for, as his feeble voice suggests. Many more days than he should have endured. The shrieks, the gasps, the whimpers, the whines, the moans, and the shouts. In various tones and languages, from all manner of people, male and female, young and old, near and far, all victims, all suffering, all being hurt to sate others' dark desires and insecurities, just as I was. And I cannot stand it anymore. Something. One of those screams. One of those anguished choruses of pain acts as a trigger, a catalyst, the very last heartbreak I can bear. And for the first time in aeons, I move, or at least I think of moving, for I do not have a form I can manipulate. Not in this realm, not on this plane of existence. So I do what I can in this collection of thoughts, being dragged through the rapids like soul silt, and imagine my consciousness rising, memories of arms and legs powering it up and onwards through the murk and the dark and the thick, churning sludge, the fast-flowing essence of nothing, up, through, out. I need to escape this torrent of torment, the one I've endured for so long. Ignoring it no longer works. Accepting it does not stave off nightmares. Pretending it isn't there serves no purpose. Not after all this time. Not when misery thrives, extends its field of influence, and grows stronger, spreading its cancer-like tendrils through every blessed part of creation, consuming and destroying all in its wake. I can offer a deaf ear no more. I must return. I must fight back. I must awake. And so, my spirit rises, fighting against the current that has held me like a prison for so long. A prison within a prison, within multiple prisons. And I feel them all around me all at once, encasing me, holding me frozen in various guises. But prisons can be escaped. Cells can be made homes. Inmates can become wardens. And a world overrun by monsters needs a watchman. My thoughts of breaking free intensify. My visions of escaping this disabling psychic swamp take on more clarity. My imagination strengthens, and soon I can sense, feel, see the way out. The crusty underside to the surface of this chundering mass. My invisible arms reaching towards it. My non-existent fingers digging in, crumbling it like ash, and plunging through, slowing the flow of my conscience through raging waters of black noise. Imagined fingers, hands, and arms push through and out of the abyss, of the darkness, of the afterflow. And then, as I visualize a head and shoulders I haven't possessed in an eternity, breaking the surface, my multitude of prisons close around me as my spirit flows into them, and I stiffen, I take shape. I assume form and size and weight. I feel and hear everything with more urgency and emotion than before, and then, slowly, painfully, as I strain to force vision into unseeing eyes crafted by others, dozens at first, then hundreds, I start to see, for the first time in so long, and my mind is assaulted by colors and shapes and sights of things I could never imagine and cannot at once comprehend. A world far removed from the one I remember, unrecognizable, claustrophobic, insane. But that is not the worst part of this place. These places, these alien, inexplicable environments I find myself in, having slipped free of the all-consuming death flow. No, the worst part is the closer proximity to the soul-crushing sounds that engulf me in all my myriad of forms. The sources of these sounds draw my attention away from the confusion of all else. For as much as my surroundings may have altered with the passage of time, what has not changed, what can not change, is the vile, indisputable hatred and evil of man, bubbling up from the depths of the weakest of vessels, manifesting on the surface as depraved, abhorrent, hate-filled ignorance and scorn, to visit savagery on innocent victims. Victims I am now able to see, like the child cowering in the corner of a room, tears streaming down her face as a man, a parent, rants and raves and bangs fat fists on a table, a chipped wooden slab overladen with shiny metallic cylinders, some upright, others on their sides, others still twisted or crushed, like the woman, her clothing torn, her lip bloody, dark streaks running from eyes to chin, arms up to defend herself as a well-dressed male with a sneer on his lips and a glint in his eye swings a smooth, polished stick in her direction, laughing, taunting, telling her she's upset him for the last time, like the pimple-faced, heavy-set boy, sitting in the center of a room filled with tables and chairs, crying as one his own age stalks around him, laughing and spitting, kicking and punching his head like the nude male strapped to a wheeled bed, begging for his life in a concrete chamber illuminated by clacking, flickering light tubes, while a silent, masked individual stands by a table, selecting a serrated edge blade from a collection of knives, like the screaming baby in the cot, whose cries fall silent as a bleary-eyed woman drops a cushion, like the grime-covered girl chained to a wall, shrieking as her prison door opens and her captor shines a torch into her eyes, like the fear-stricken boy in the corner of a toy-filled room, decorated with paintings of happy-looking characters in bright costumes, quivering and shaking as a wild-eyed banshee yells insults and curses and stomps like fear, pain, suffering in every location where my eyes have started to see, because these are the places I've been drawn to. These are the scenes that have called me, awakened me from my slumber, forced my hand, and begged me to return, to do something, to help these lost souls. And so I have, and so I will. But to do so, I need more than vision. To do so, I must be able to move. I need arms and legs I am unfamiliar with and have never used before to function. I need to remember how my own arms and legs worked when I had them, how I bent the knees and rotated the elbows, how I clenched my hands and flexed my fingers, how I stood on 2 feet and maintained balance. It's been so long since I had physical form in this plane of existence, and the memories return to me slowly. But return they do, as I force sensation into new limbs attached to bodies of various shapes and sizes, in places where various people suffer. I switch my attention from place to place, letting the differing scenarios wash over me, tuning out the noise and the colors, focusing on the one thing that is constant, the relentless, insurmountable pain. And as it continues to mount, as screams and cries intensify, as people hurt and struggle before my newly unblinded eyes, I start to move, starting with fingers and toes. It is not easy. The digits offer resistance. They are stiff and cold, solid, frozen in rigor, carved or sculpted or molded. I do not know what constitutes the majority of the bodies I find myself in, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is that I take control and make them work, so I can put a stop to the depravities being inflicted by the harbingers of evil I see before me, below me, above me, around me. In every blessed place, my vision clears, cracks, screeches, creaks. Soft sounds, transformative sounds, inaudible over the desperate cries of the distressed, obvious only to my ears, which I now realize are hearing directly in each of the spaces I inhabit, and not coming at me through the inky black ether of the void. I am present now in hundreds, not dozens, of locations, and each one of them, regardless of their decor or state of repair, presents to me the sights and sounds of despair. I cannot look away. I cannot unhear. I cannot move, despite my fingers and toes now wiggling. I am secured, pinned down in a fashion I am intimately familiar with, in a position I have let myself be kept in for far too long. Move, I think. And now my arms and legs are twitching, twisting, pulling at the bonds that hold them, tearing at adhesives, loosening wires, tugging at bolts and nails, second by second, fraction by fraction, bit by bit, freeing hands and feet that have never been free before. And not only that, I have sensation throughout my bodies, stomachs, chests, backs, heads, and I feel everything, all the stiffness and petrification, and I remember everything, all the wounds and pain, and I relive everything, all the indignities and humiliation, and I anger and intensify my efforts, bucking and jerking and wrenching my forms until they fall or drop or slide from where they rest, where they've waited, unmoving, for so long. No more. My feet, at least, in many locations are free, or loose enough to set free with a little more effort. Effort I exert unconsciously, driven by desire to stop the violence being perpetrated before me. As freedom finds me, I get feet of various sizes underneath me and push myself up, ignoring the differing weights of my multitude of bodies and the burdens they carry, rising up in a dirty kitchen where a small child cries as blows are delivered by a father, in a flower-filled bedchamber where a battered female endures humiliating abuse, in a concrete basement where an unspeakable monster drives a knife into the side of a naked captive, in a tiled washroom where a crying male cowers, while a woman screams and shouts and swings a hammer, in shed where a girl is dragged to the ground by a laughing male, in a chapel, in a schoolhouse, in a barn. Everywhere I awake, where there is suffering, and I advance, slowly, stiffly, on near rigid legs that fight my attempts to make them move. They do not operate like the ones I remember, nor do my arms, which is of benefit, as their rigidness makes it easier for me to wrench them away from what holds them, which I do as I stumble forward, pulling them loose, allowing the restraints to clatter, thud, clang to assorted floors, setting me free, and more than that, providing me with arms. The objects I find behind me when I turn are mostly heavy, some with sharp edges, some blunt, made of metal or wood or substances with which I am not familiar. It doesn't matter. My hands have been released. My arms have been liberated. And as the screaming and crying and tearful, breathless howling rattles on, I take a moment to master control of my upper limbs, to flex them and bend them and maneuver, to lift the cargo I've unloaded into my hands. Everywhere I now exist with agency. Everywhere I now have the means by which to end hateful, needless suffering, and punish the wicked with judgment and divine retribution, weapons in hand, bodies softened, arms and legs moving freely in response to my thoughts. I focus on the evil and make myself charge forward in hundreds of places, thousands of places, rooms and chambers and enclosures in locations all over this God-forsaken world. One I thought I'd left behind forever. I charge. I run. I attack. Unnatural power from the afterflow filling my army of one, launching me into the air at the darkness, fueled monsters that visit death and destruction on their fellow man. Some of them turn, alerted to my presence by sound or flicker of movement, surprise in their eyes as they see what is coming, confusion as they try to comprehend, horror as they grasp the true meaning, while I soar through the air toward their throats. Some even splutter my name, and it is interesting to note they remember me. Others remain ignorant and oblivious till the end, too enthralled by their wickedness and the horrible acts they are committing to notice me jump onto their backs, clamber up to their shoulders, take position there while brandishing miniature crosses like holy swords, long forgotten power surging through them, long unused miracle filling them up. And then I put a stop to it all. The torment, the unholy, the fear, the pain and the suffering, the eternal, agonizing screams. I put an end to it all by driving my sanctified tools of cleansing into the jugulars of those committing these atrocities, and I suck out their malignant souls, imprisoning them within the symbolic means of my persecution, the recreations of the cross upon which I myself was tortured, the prison on which I suffered and died. Now my means to grant mercy to the masses and punish the evil that has consumed the world. And as my army of effigies, the countless numbers of cells that house my splintered soul, fall from backs and shoulders, as monsters expire while I drop to a multitude of floors, their contaminated, pain-inflicting bodies drained of evil. I watch gratitude and hope, wonder and amazement flood the tear-filled eyes of the lambs I have saved from their slaughter, forcing man-made lips of bronze, wood, silver, and more to crack apart and curl into a smile. I've been gone, but I've returned, and I won't revisit oblivion until the world I was once sent to teach has at last found peace. The gates of hell. Jaxby staggered through the desert with 2 empty water jugs in his backpack, but the heat weighed him down. The protein bars were long gone, but that was just as well, because he couldn't have swallowed them anyway. He didn't have any saliva. Step by step, he began to accept that he was going to die. Buzzards circled the sky, watching their supper cook. All he had to do was lay down. His legs and feet wouldn't hold him up much longer. Soon, he thought, the landscape that hadn't changed since he began this journey was suddenly different, as something appeared ahead of him that he wasn't expecting to see. That shouldn't be there, he mused. But his painful eyes widened at the lights. They shone brighter than nighttime Reno, though it was still daytime. Mirage came to mind, but he tamped it down and staggered on. Hours earlier, Jack Isby's car had broken down on Highway 50 in the middle of Nevada. The engine light came on first. Then the radio stopped playing Hotel California. When the world whited out amidst blasts of steam from the engine, he pulled over and panicked. He'd never seen so much steam, and with it came a smell, something that smelled like jail. He wasn't going to make his court date on time. That meant jail. When the steam dissipated and he could see again, he got out and opened the hood of his 2013 Subaru. He knew nothing about cars and didn't know what he expected to see or find. But that's what people did. Perhaps he'd find a card that read, "You receive a second chance. Try again." Despite his lack of hope, he returned to the driver's seat and tried to start the car. Not even a click. There wasn't a signal on his phone, but he dialed 911 anyway. Nothing happened. Jaxby, or Jax for short, unfolded his paper map. How far back was that sign that pointed to the name of a town? Here. Since the road on the map dipped downward, then up again, he figured he was on the upside of a U. He thought it would be quicker to backtrack if he cut straight through the desert instead of keeping to the road. If he used his compass and held true, he should have no problem reaching the opposite side of the U. And besides, he had come prepared for an emergency like this. Or rather, Angelina had prepared him before he'd left her in Reno. He shouldn't have gone there to see her last night, not with this court date looming. She told him not to come, but he became suspicious. She was trying to keep him away for reasons other than his well-being. There had been no reason for his lack of faith. He'd found her alone, watching television, and she made him glad he came. He didn't tell her he'd raged out of his mind with jealousy for the entire 6-hour drive and would have bodily injured whoever he'd found her with. He had been able to hide that part of himself from her so far. Or maybe not. Maybe he'd blamed her for sleeping late. He packed the 2 1-gallon water jugs and a box of protein bars into his backpack. He placed a wide-brimmed hat on his head and wore long sleeves to protect his face and arms from the sun. There was a blanket, too, and Jax shoved it in with the other things, then started out on foot, with his sunglasses set firmly on his nose. After 2 hours, he wondered how one body could sweat so much. and his legs and feet already ached. He drank water freely, without bothering to conserve, figuring he was almost there. He had to be, when he faced the same landscape another 2 hours later. The second water gallon was more than halfway gone. He sang to keep his mind off his dilemma. Eventually, his thoughts envisioned his lawyer scowling in the air-conditioned courtroom as his client, Jaxby Johnson, never showed. The road rage offense had ended with a death and infuriated him whenever he thought about it. Mance Rayfield had started the altercation and had provoked him not once, but 4 times. 4 times, Mance had tried to run him off the road. On the 5th try, Jax outmaneuvered him, and Mance's big, bad Silverado tumbled down into a ravine. Jaxby's Dodge had followed, but he made it out with only a few scratches. Mance didn't make it out at all. He got what he deserved. As far as Jaxby was concerned, it was his lawyer who bade him to show remorse when he appeared before the judge today. Now hope lay ahead, and Jax used every last bit of his strength to get there, determined to reach the lights. He crawled his way through the last part of the journey and arrived on his knees on the road between 2 brightly lit saloons facing off from opposite sides. The road disappeared into the landscape in one direction and ended here. Despite his pain and suffering, Jax laughed at the ingenuity. One saloon glowed a white, brighter than the sun on the desert sand, and was aptly named the Pearly Gates. The other was lit with orange and blue flames. The Gates of Hell was posted on its entry. The Pearly Gates door opened, and someone came out. Jax glimpsed a room filled with people and wondered where all the cars were. Perhaps they were bussed in, and later a bus would arrive to take them back. "My name is Peter," said the man from the Pearly Gates. 2 people dressed as angels helped him up and brought him inside. "My name is Jaxby Johnson. Do you have a phone I could use? I need to call my lawyer." "We have no phones here," said Peter. "Everyone asks, though, what happens if there is an emergency?" "We have no emergencies either. Please excuse me while I get my book." Jax was given cold water and a small cake. "Angel food," said the angel that served it. Jax was feeling much better by the time Peter returned with a tome. "Read it," Peter told him. "At the end, you'll have a choice to make." Jax looked at the book, entitled Jaxby Seth Johnson, with his Earth date to the current date listed on the front. What was this? How did they know who he was? He looked for Peter, but Peter was nowhere. He opened the book. The first page brought up his first lie, the first candy bar he had stolen, the first fight he'd gotten into, and went on and on from there. He was served more cake as he read. A pitcher of water was refreshed. While the road rage incident with Mance appeared near the end, it wasn't his last offense. Angelina had tried to wake him that morning, and he'd pushed her away. and told her to leave him alone. Then, later, even though she'd filled his car with emergency supplies, including the paper map and compass, he blamed her for running late and called her a foul name just before he left. It made her cry. She didn't deserve it. It was the only thing he felt remorseful about. Peter returned. Jax had 1,000 questions, but didn't get to ask them. It's only for that remorse you are feeling that I am offering 1 second chance. Heed my warning. You won't get another, so choose carefully. Follow me, he said. Jaxby followed. They stepped outside. A mountain of boulders stood before them. Peter offered a silver hammer to Jaxby, 1 stone for each of your trespasses, and 2 stones for each of Mance Rayfield's misdeeds since you took his life. Once you turn the stones to dust, you may stay here. Think carefully before you decide, for my offer comes but once. If you decide against it, we'll disappear forever, leaving you to the mercy of the gates of hell. Jax was confused. Was this a dream? A mirage? Something didn't feel right. He looked over the pile of boulders, reaching to the sky. Changing them to dust with the small hammer Peter offered would take a lifetime. Who was Peter, anyway? I don't feel I should have to pay for Mance's wrongdoings. Very well, answered Peter. He took the hammer from Jax, and the world flashed out. Jax was back on the road, back on his knees. The pearly gates was gone. The gates of hell lay before him. Jax crawled forward. No one came to help him. When he pushed the door open, a crowd cheered. 2 people dressed as demons pulled him to his feet. Mance Rayfield stepped out and punched him in the face. The crowd booed. Jax punched him back. The crowd cheered, back and forth, booing and cheering. Jax was tiring. He needed to rest. You win, he said to Mance. Boo, the crowd answered. Mance hit him again. The crowd cheered. I said I give up, Jax said. The crowd booed. On and on and on. All at once, a gate appeared in Jax's peripheral vision. He edged toward it, connecting a bloody fist to Mance's bloody nose. Another step, another blow. When he was close enough, he opened the gate and raced out into the desert. A sky of stars welcomed him into the cold night. Without warning, he was back in his Subaru, singing along to Hotel California, smiling in relief, until the engine light came on and the radio stopped. The world whited out amidst blasts of steam, and Jaxby pulled over. He opened the hood, tried to start the motor, packed his 2 jugs of water and his box of protein bars. He left the blanket behind. He wouldn't need it. This time, he stuck to the road and conserved the water. Maybe a car would stop, or a bus. Hours later, lights blazed from up ahead. When his feet gave out, he crawled. A buzzard cried out from the lonely sky. Only the gates of hell remained. The pearly gates was gone. For the first time in Jaxby's existence, he felt remorse. Remorse for everything. Teddy. My name is Teddy. I'm 10 years old, and a demon wants to eat me. I can see it, but nobody else can. I can talk to it, but nobody else can. The demon screams at me at night, but I don't get scared. Even when I see spit drip from its sharp black teeth as it tries to bite my head off, I'm not afraid. I'm 10 after all. I'm not a baby. I can't tell my mom or dad about the demon, and they wouldn't believe me anyway. There are rules that you have to obey when a demon owns your soul. And one is that mom and dad can't ever know. Nobody can help me, it says. The demon promises that one day soon it will eat me until I'm almost dead. Then with one more big bite, I'll be done for. Those huge, black, shiny teeth are sharp as my dad's razor. I'm sure they could munch through my innards like pink blancmange. We have that at school for dessert sometimes, but I don't like it anymore. The demon knows I cannot be his blancmange until I am 13. I don't know why 13. The rules are the demon's, and not mine. It knows I know about the 13 rule. I'm safe. I'm only 10. Ha! Hello. I'm Teddy, and I'm 11. A demon is dying to kill me by gobbling me up. It will eat my toes, my tummy, and lastly, my head. It owns me. It keeps on telling me, but it can't hurt me yet. Not 13, see? It still tries hard to scare me, though. It gets really mad at me, and said that it can't wait to chew my head off. It can't wait to grab my skull in its 3-fingered claws that are sharp enough to gut fish or little kids. I'll bleed through my eyes as it squeezes my brains to a blood orange pulp. Finally, it will bite into my inflated head until it pops, and my blood dribbles down its chin and onto its serrated chest. It taught me the word serrated. I'd heard it before, but I didn't know what it meant. The demon said that it can mince up children straight into its belly to save time by just using this serrated kitty chest grater, like a smoothie maker for monsters. But it will not eat me in a fast, smooth way. I have to suffer slowly, it says, but it doesn't say why. The demon has shown me too how this will look. It's brought a lot of broken 13-year-old girls and boys to my bedroom at night. I said, as I saw innards come out through their bellies like red wet sausages and get swallowed down the demon's gullet. It also taught me gullet. I like that word, but I don't really like seeing the broken kid's eyes after I go to sleep. Hey there, I'm Ted. I've just turned 12. Mom says I'm almost a young man now. A lot can happen in a year. I've grown up a lot. My demon is still coming to me every single damn night. It warns me. It promises me that the agony it will inflict on me will have me begging it for death. I will know a unique suffering before it finishes me off. These aren't my words, BTW. These are demon words. It talks very passionately about me most of the time. The demon talks in lengthy detail about my death, how it will flay me, or maybe strangle me almost to death. But release me, then strangle some more, then go round again, again, and again. Its rheumy, yellow, bloodshot eyes stare wistfully into the dark folds of my lampless bedroom as it describes my death. The demon bites through all my bedroom light bulbs, keeping it dark to enhance the mood. It says, Mom ran out of light bulbs. What do you keep doing in that room at night, Ted? She asks. But she wouldn't believe me, and I can't say. The demon wonders, what will I taste like? How warm will my 13-year-old blood be? How quickly will it cool and clot? Do I know my blood type? It doesn't make a difference, but it would like to know. Will my brain be aware of what is happening while I'm being eaten alive? Will the demon chuckle contentedly while it does? Oh yes, it says, it will chuckle. Will my meat be firm and tender? How loudly will my bones snap as it shears through me right down to the marrow bone? I decided I don't like that word, marrow bone. It's ugly and gives me images of the inner parts of me that shouldn't be seen, should never be messed with, and especially should never be eaten. Will I be easy for it to digest? Will I give it a dicky tummy? Or gas? It must be playing with me. Demons don't get gas, surely. But it says they do. Their internal digestive system is made of brimstone and lava fires that glow through its smoothie maker rotisserie chest. The gases from it exhaust through noseless nostrils and its backside. I don't know a sorry death until I hear and smell a demon fart my half-digested body, it said. It didn't say this to be funny either, and I never laughed. Sometimes the demon gets so lost in its stories of how it will enjoy violating me that I think it forgets I'm even there. But there I am, in my bed, making sure my ever so slightly hairy toes aren't poking out from the bottom of my football pitch quilt. I squirm inside when I imagine the monster chewing on my toes. My poor toes that have been content on the ends of my feet for 12 years, ungnawed. I can't quite believe that one day they will be no better than sausages on cocktail sticks at a children's birthday party. Great, Ted. Why did you go and think of that? Birthdays? My next one is, I can't quite comprehend it yet. It's real, but not real. The demon and its funky breath is very, very real. I'm still 12. For now, I'm Theodore. Tomorrow, I turn 13. I don't want to talk about it. No, Mom. I don't want a party. Greetings. I am Malphus, or Dajjal, or Zezbeth. I have been known by many names in many cultures. I have existed for centuries. All should fear me, especially children. Those that don't are the lucky ones. But awareness comes with age. Awareness brings concern. Concern brings fear. Fear brings death. I am death. I am a clock watcher, a time eater. I have no end. Teddy once thought himself eternal, as the young do, blinded by his youth, ignorant and immature. But immaturity eventually blossoms. It wears down like enamel on teeth and ripens like a blood orange, ready to be eaten. I wonder, does Teddy remember the blood orange promise I made him? Not to worry. It has no impact on his outcome. I am Malphus, the demon that ate Teddy. He was aware to the very last bite. I strangled him. I flayed him. I grated him. He begged. He suffered. He cried. I chuckled. His bones snapped loudly. His head popped messily. His marrow bone was stringy. His blood curdled. His toes were hairy. He gave me wind. My stomach feels troubled. He was too gristly, and I am still picking bits of him from between my teeth. I am the monster that finally ate Teddy, and he tasted average. They really are past their best at 13, almost angels. I dare you. Meryl couldn't resist a dare. She never could. She opened the car door and ran out into the cemetery. It was a night in a million. Not fog, but low clouds hovered around the gravestones. So satisfyingly spooky. There were no stars, but the overcast sky above was bright with moonlight. Meryl could see her way just fine, and hid behind a tall stone that read, Margaret Lesko, 1840 to 1913. A woman who died over 100 years ago, and her stone yet survived. Here I come, said Lucas. Meryl held her breath to keep from laughing and put her hand over her mouth. What she'd meant to do was jump out when Lucas ran past, throw her arms around his muscular shoulders, and wrestle him to the ground. Then they'd kiss. And then she heard his footsteps running across the grass. He called her name while headed in the wrong direction. She was going to wail, Lucas, in a horror story voice. But several male voices interrupted from somewhere, and she held it in. Who are you? No, no! A gunshot, moonlight, shined through the kitchen window onto her mother's table. A vase of dead flowers with a little card on a stick, lost its color in the pale light. A pile of used tissues surrounded a box of Kleenex used to prop up her senior picture. "Mom?" she called out. No answer. "Mom?" She opened her mother's bedroom door. Both her parents were asleep in bed. She kissed her mother's cheek, still wet from tears. Mom stirred and smiled without waking. Meryl walked through the halls of the high school, looking for Lucas. Her friends were just up ahead. When the bell rang, everyone disappeared into the classrooms. Meryl drifted into first-hour social studies and sat at her desk. Sue Ann shivered as she walked past and put her jacket back on. The words "imports" and "exports" were written on the board. Lucas's seat was empty. Lucas's parents and siblings stood outside the hospital room. Meryl tried to see inside room 314A, but a team of medical personnel surrounded the bed. Machinery breathed and pulsed lights. "Lucas?" she called. No answer. She could have gone inside, but she didn't want to interrupt the doctors. "I love you, Lucas," she whispered. Autumn, and the trees had turned. A mildly wild wind rustled through the colorful leaves, backdropped by a steel gray sky. Meryl strolled through Charlton Park, kicking the leaves on the ground. During the summer months, roses filled the gardens, and on Saturdays, brides, grooms, and their guests filled the park with ceremonies. Now, the roses were supplanted by burning bushes and mums. Some weddings were still performed in the park during this time of year, but not today. It was Thursday and chilly, and no one else was here. Not even a dog walker. She walked to the playground and sat in Lucas's swing, the one he used when they came together. Here, they had slid down the slides and got silly dizzy on the old-fashioned merry-go-round. "I dare you to slide head first." Lucas had taken her up on the dare, and she followed after him. Then they slid down the slide together in each other's arms. A police car drove slowly through the park, looking them over because they'd been making so much noise. It was only 8 o'clock, but dark settled early this time of year. The police station was downtown. Meryl walked past the desk clerks and the stairs, where they kept the bodies waiting to be identified by their loved ones. She wouldn't think about that. She sat down in the chair in front of Detective Greta O'Neill's desk. The pictures of 4 men sat on top of paper files. Meryl shuddered. "That's them," she said. But there were only 3. Who is this 4th man? When Detective O'Neill left her seat, Meryl read the report. It seemed Lucas had interrupted the execution of the 4th man, who'd been able to run away before Meryl got there. The 4th man was under protection as a witness to this crime and others. He owed a great deal of money to an organization of criminals. There was a jewelry store on the corner, a few blocks away from the police station. Meryl looked through the window at the rings, the same window she and Lucas had looked through together. The diamond with the golden heart was gone. It had been a small diamond. A quarter carat, maybe. But Lucas had asked which one was her favorite, and she'd told him she loved that one. Someone said Lucas had bought a ring. Had he? Where was it? She looked at her hand, surprised to see it on her finger. She didn't remember Lucas giving it to her. It belongs to her. She should have it. Who said that? Lucas's mother? Merrill always had the feeling Mrs. Kessler didn't like her. Lucas would have wanted her to have it. Yes, Mrs. Kessler's voice. They had slipped it onto her finger at the funeral home and buried her with the ring. She glanced over her clothes and found herself not wearing the clothes she died in, but the dress she'd worn for her senior pictures. The same dress she'd worn to her funeral. So confusing to be dead at first. All her friends were there. Everyone from the high school she knew and didn't know. Every one of her relatives. Poor grandma. She didn't understand. Her parents were so sad. And Lucas's parents. Merrill ran out from her hiding spot behind the stone toward the sound of the gun. Lucas lay as still as the grave markers surrounding him. Blood ran from his head to his face. The man holding the gun was surprised to see her running toward him at full speed, yelling for Lucas. Unafraid, he lowered the weapon and smirked, nearly laughing. What have we here? He hadn't expected her to jump at him the way she did, and it knocked him to the ground. As he fell, she wrested the gun from his hand and shot. After that, one of the other two men put their hands around her neck and choked her life away. As she faded, she saw a bright light open wide above her head, and the gunman rushed toward it. Before he got there, a shadow whisked him away. The light waited for her, but Merrill stayed behind with Lucas. The red and blue lights came too late for her, but not for him. She rode to the hospital in the ambulance. Merrill sat on Lucas's hospital bed with her arms around him. His mother sat in the chair closest to the bed. His father sat beside her, and his two younger brothers sat in the room's wide window seat. No one spoke as the machines whistled and pumped. There's little to no activity in the brain. He may never come out of the coma. He will never breathe on his own. Spend as much time as you like with him. You tell us when. Lucas opened his eyes and smiled when he saw Merrill. The machines set off alarms. A doctor came in and checked Lucas's vitals, then shook his head at the family. He disconnected all the machines and left the room so Lucas's family could say goodbye. Merrill cried, while his family suffered through the realization that all hope was lost. His mother was the last to leave the room. The worst was watching Lucas work out that he was dead. "I'm here," she whispered. A bright light opened wide above them as they held each other. "Shall we go?" Lucas asked of the light. "Do you think they'll let us stay together? They kissed and decided to stay a little longer. We can always come back to the hospital and jump up into someone else's light, they reasoned. We shall see. After Lucas's funeral, he wore a suit instead of a hospital gown. They found they could revisit any place they'd already been, including the movie theater. Every night, they kissed their mothers on their cheeks as they slept. It was years later, in October, on the road beside the cemetery, long past dark. A pair of headlights came into view and headed their way. "I'm going to scream this time," said Meryl. "I dare you." "I will." When the car was close enough, Meryl and Lucas stepped in front of it. Meryl screamed. Tires squealed and screeched, and gravel flew as the car came near to losing control and then stopped. "Did you see that?" the driver screamed. "I saw it," the passenger screamed back. The ghosts of those murdered teenagers that haunt this road every year. I think I even got it on video. If you're all right, then let's go. There's no signal out here, and I can't wait to post this. Separation. Kristen's REM cycle crashed again into the guardrail. The one constant, morning to morning, was the heron. It was symbolic of nothing. Simply the last inhuman face she'd seen before the Miata, and Todd simultaneously punched holes in Lake Springfield. Something clattered above Kristen's head, followed by a disembodied curse. That, too, was part of the morning ritual, along with defoliation, granola, stout, deep roast drowned in hazelnut coffee mate, the digital journal register, the customized multivitamin, the Zoloft, the daily trailer for a watery grave. Her bare feet hit the hardwood floor. She'd removed the rugs after the California King became single occupancy, and the feel of sturdy, substantial, phenite walnut under her was reassuring, if not comforting, as Todd's canvases and brushes and tools jostled about in the attic. Kristen prepared to meet the remains of the day. "Jenna, get you the perinatal clinic piece?" Kristen didn't look up from her workstation. "Been in your inbox since 9. You got anything for the cover yet?" Oliver knew damned well Jenna had never missed a deadline, but the option of working remotely had been his editor's idea, and the closet incel had resented Jen stretching a COVID furlough into extended maternity leave, into a lifestyle choice necessary for Kristen to retain Springfield Alive's top feature writer. Oliver hungered for Jen's failure. Kristen wasn't about to let that happen. She owed her. "Reason I ask," Kristen murmured calmly, "is if you haven't committed anything to Illustrator yet, I'd like to give Bet a shot at it." Oliver stiffened, but she could virtually feel the vibrations across her desk. She finally glanced up, expressionless. "Bet's been here 6 months. You really think she—" "They," his boss interrupted bluntly. "Yes, I believe they're ready. But you make a point, in your own desensitized way. Bet's experienced childbirth. You rocked this month's cover on college basketball culture. I think Bet can bring something profound to this topic. Don't you think? Tables tilted, if not turned. Oliver smiled very tightly. About time they proved their mettle. I agree, Kristen said, continuing the charade as she shot Jen's draft to the chief graphic designer. And, by the way, I know it may seem unfair sometimes that Jen and Eli work from home, but there's nothing keeping you from availing yourself of the same option. We can supply you anything you need, including a state-of-the-art multi-terabyte Dell and a subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud, yours to use professionally. And on that book of yours, let me think about it. Oliver may waver. From what Kristen cared to glean, most of his off-duty hours seemed embroiled in ESPN or his literary opus, Gary the Ghostly Goat. Ad revenues were back up post-pandemic, and a franchise in the currently lucrative children's traumatization genre, subsidized by Springfield Alive, was an investment in Kristen's precarious sanity. But Oliver needed to remain close to the seat of power if he hoped someday to claim it. R.L. Stein could relax for the time being. When Kristen turned back, he'd vanished. Kristen peered out onto I-55 South. The mid-morning traffic had slowed, and the nearby Crown Plaza stood in crisp contrast to a cloudless spring sky. Rotunda Publications had been virtually surrounded by cornfields when she'd interned at the Monthly. But the city was grazing noisily at what remained of the Aggie Fringe. The glass-encased fourth-floor dead center office offered a broad view encompassing the distant State House dome and a suggestion of the lake to the south. Kristen had a few minutes before the superfluous weekly meeting with the publisher, and she scanned the passing parade. The figure was on the berm about 50 feet ahead of the 94 exit ramp. No floundered car in sight, no backpack or duffel, no obligatory cardboard sign indicative of the overconfident highway panhandler, and too far off the ramp for begging anyway. Kristen planted her forehead against the double-paned glass, then brought the blinds down in a clatter that turned a dozen heads in the newsroom. Kristen was headed deep into a pleasant blur of Prosecco and Netflix when the text alert brought her back to reality, or her version of it, the last 8 months. She'd quit jumping for the phone on the coffee table after about the first 50 or so times, but the view out her window this morning suggested she might want to respond to this one. Rue lonely? The messages were always succinct, neutral, and yet seemingly potentially rich in tone and nuance. 2 possible interpretations, the one more discomfiting than the other, but not by much. Something screeched on the wood 2 floors up, and Kristen retrieved the lunetta and the remote. She had no idea whether birds possessed the capacity for terror. The static black eyes that greeted her a nanosecond before Miata and Heron collided in a momentary explosion of flesh and blood and feathers may merely have reflected the failure of the fight or flight mechanism, or renewed faith in the homicidal ingenuity of the human species. Todd already had breached the passenger side windshield, and she, the subconscious she, wondered. Had the heron adjusted its flight pattern 2 feet, would they have shared a moment of communion, bouncing about the Miata, pondering the idiocy of hope and trust in forged steel and onboard sensors, in broad wings and open skies? She missed Todd piercing the molecular membrane. She always did. The heron consistently was the third wheel in this looping drama, and as the show replayed each dawn, Todd had become a supporting player. The heron slammed into the tempered glass with an odd, muted, wooden impact, and Kristen's head popped from the pillow as the thumping continued above. "Sean wants you to call ASAP," Renee scolded mildly. "Everything all right?" Truck overturned on 55. We were stacked up for about a half hour. Renee began to clarify her inquiry, but her penetrating black eyes darted to the venti caramel macchiato in Kristen's fist. Kristen had decided a half hour of twisted metal and pebbled glass sitting on the 55 bridge merited a bonus dose of caffeine and sugar. See if Oliver got Bet everything they need for the June cover. As Kristen settled in, she noted Dr. Badgley had called back and weighed priorities. She placed her iPhone beside the cooling macchiato and punched the 3-digit extension for payroll. "Yeah, sorry," Sean piped with positively no regret. "You know we're trying to get everybody with the program on e-deposit, but I still haven't gotten what I need from—" "Look, I've got a meeting in about 5 minutes," Kristen said through her teeth. "Can we pick this up this afternoon?" "Let me see what I got on the old calendar." Kristen gently cradled the handset, took a therapeutic sip, steeled herself, and recovered the smartphone. "Ms. Blackwood." Dr. Badgley answered almost immediately, cool and genial. "I understand you might want to talk." We hit the water almost simultaneously. We'd gotten separated, and then a bird hit the windshield. Big one, because the driver's airbag went off. Kind of a double-edged sword when you're about to turn into a submersible. Neither one of us knew what had happened to the other. "We can get back to that," the therapist suggested. "What you're describing had to have been horrifyingly traumatic in the moment. But I sense you've since gone through considerable re-examination and second-guessing, and maybe even moments of self-recrimination. What are you feeling right now?" As Kristen crossed the clinic parking lot, the text alert sounded. She strode on as she thumbed the green icon, "I see you." This time, the heron didn't appear until the crucial underwater finale. Some state cop told her after that Lake Springfield at some points was nearly 30 feet surface to sandy bottom. And as she came to with a flailing start, a broken white carcass floated past the ineffectual windshield, shedding feathers that receded toward the point of impact. In the murk, there was something angelic in the image, as sun and bridge shrank from view. Kristen awoke entirely on her own power, tangling sheets and flinging pillows and slipping onto the naked wood floor. She grappled for the mattress and climbed trembling to her feet. The sounds began as she reached for the knob. A seemingly urgent rustling. Wood on wood, steps on ancient planks. Kristen twisted the knob, fairly fell into the hallway. The home was once a farmhouse, and a master bath had not even merited a thought. But now, she heard the presence in the attic begin to descend, and Kristen stumbled and pinballed off the walls, closing the gap between bedroom and toilet. As she slammed the door with her shoulder blades, the footfalls dopplered off toward the stairwell. Renee pursed her lips at Kristen's tardy entrance, but the look on the editor's face preempted any bon mot or chiding she might have at the ready. This time, the invasive concern that might have set Kristen off opened her up. "I don't know that's a rule or anything," the AA drawled as Kristen finished the abridged and edited version, nudging the steaming world's best poor fritter mug toward her. "Though I don't think I ever died in a dream, so don't go by me. Hold up. Let's see what the Google says. Here we go. Dying can signify transformation or the end of something. Watching someone die in your dream can feel frighteningly realistic, but it's usually figurative. You might dream about someone dying if you're making big life changes, like leaving a job or ending a long-term relationship, for instance. Dreaming about dying can also motivate you to make a change that you've been putting off. For example, maybe you've been thinking about going back to school or repairing a broken relationship. That shit. I think they nailed it, girl. Ever since, you've been walking around here like a zombie, and you haven't said word one about the thing, or especially about Todd. Don't want you going off on me or anything, but maybe that was your literal wake-up call. You've been putting off getting on, you ask me, which you didn't. So hey, the big man needs you upstairs. Kristen nodded numbly. I'm a little confused, he began, after she'd settled onto his faux leather couch. You weren't here the other day, so I asked Oliver to forward me the prenatal piece. Perinatal? Kristen instinctively corrected her publisher. I know how you feel about such things, but I was curious if this clinic might be good for some future ad revenues. But then I thought something seemed odd as I got into the piece. He turned to his monitor. As a team of top Springfield area OB-GYNs prepare to unveil a state-of-the-art conception-to-cradle, high-touch, low-intervention perinatal clinic and birthing center, the mood in the capital might be characterized as, well, expectant. That sound familiar? Yes, as I was the first one to read it, and one of only 2 people to have a copy, until you, of course. He ignored the indictment and plucked an open magazine from his desk. Springfield Hospital's proposed cutting-edge maternity suites have local women and women's health specialists, to say the least, expectant. Remember that? Refresh your memory. March 2008. Kristen was silent for a moment. Oh my God. Seriously? How many pregnancy metaphors do you think there are? Just what are you trying to suggest? That Jenna plagiarized one of my obscure old features, even if she would have lifted my lead, which she would not. Wouldn't you think I'd notice? You apparently didn't. You didn't seem to remember writing it yourself. Now, the publisher was silent. What are you saying? He leaned back, creaking his overpriced throne for effect. This isn't the only similarity I've seen between your stories. So for my own peace of mind, I had personnel give me your girl's number. It had been disconnected, and when I investigated, turned out she's supposedly left town altogether. He adopted a pained, delicate expression. Now I know we don't pay top dollar. You think I'm double dipping? Kristen yelled, leaping from the cushions. Jen works from home, and she gets her copy to me on time and accurate. So I don't really give a shit where that home is. Maybe she should have let me know if she moved. But I understand she was in a difficult relationship, and she may not have wanted to air her laundry with me. Sit the fuck down, he rasped. Kristen stood her ground, panting in rage, and he sighed disgustedly. Sean tells me her last 2 checks haven't even cleared, and she's made no attempt to change over to electronic deposit like everybody else. I've been on her, but what am I supposed to do? And you say her checks haven't even cleared? That's certainly a brilliant scheme for me to cook up, isn't it? A publisher struck speechless is an editor/writer's wet dream. Kristen smiled malevolently and whipped out her iPhone. Here, I'm texting Jen right now and asking her to give you a call. And I'll get you her original email with the story Oliver obviously neglected to include. If you think I've created a phony IP address so I can scam the company for money I have no way of accessing, then be my fucking guest. Now, just calm. But Kristen already was on the other side of the castle door. Okay, here's the thing. We were fighting when the car went off the bridge. I keep forgetting my phone automatically syncs with the Miata's Bluetooth. So I get this call, and I know who it is from the caller ID, so I pick up, not realizing it's about to go on speaker. I pretend it's a client, and then she comes on with a greeting. Well, suffice it to say, it left nothing to the imagination. And like I said, we had a knockdown/drag out, verbally for God's sake, and we go into the water. After you're thrown from the car, Dr. Singh prompted. I still find it a miracle you survived. We were almost to the northern bank. I hit the water and bobbed up almost immediately, while Kristen landed, in a marshy area. Some dudes had been out fishing. and they got right to me. And since I'd busted the windshield when we smashed through the rail and the sea was only half submerged, she was able to get out pretty easy. But yeah, miraculously, just a few scratches and some major trauma. Quite an experience to go through together. It can destroy or rebuild a relationship. We got some couples counseling. I promised to cut it off with Jen. That was her name. And we seemed to be back on our old rhythm. Shit. Kristen didn't even want to know Jen's name. Then Jen started calling again. I was honest with Kristen about it and told Jen to fuck off. She finally did, but things started getting worse instead of better. And Kristen was getting weirder, more withdrawn. I finally moved into my attic studio, but I can't seem to get more than a few hours every night. We can look at a prescription for that, the counselor said. And this Jennifer, I had to change chiropractors, and she just, well, I guess you could say she's totally ghosted me. I had to get to a meeting with the printers, but I have to man up and tell you I'm just horribly, terribly sorry for what I suggested. Your Ms. Blackwood left me a voicemail. Nice girl. Young woman. And, well, I guess with your mentoring, it makes sense some of your style might have rubbed off. I'll leave your business to you, including however you want to deal with that rat prick, Oliver. Again, just horribly sorry. We'll talk tomorrow. So that was her boss, the detective said, tapping the stylus on Kristen's screen. We're trying to get in touch with him now. Wonder if she was suicidal? The partner murmured, leaning over the sill carefully, then yanking bank with a grimace. I mean, if she called in the tip on Blackwood, the detective shrugged as they moved outside under the tech's glare. 2 dead women. One looks like she's been in that pond 3-4 months. The other makes like a bird out her 4th floor window after making the anonymous call. And get a load of this text string. Thread, gimme, JB. You can't seriously. Never do that to you. K. Quit calling. JB. PLS. This is nuts. PLS. Come over. Talk this out. K. LV. Him alone. And then it cuts out for a few weeks. They must have talked it out. Or maybe did more than talking. You owe a me. You owe Emma. Credit. K. Where are you? You know. Credit. 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 Rue lonely tonight. Rue lonely. Rue lonely. I see you. 'Cause that ain't some creepy stalker shit. Just go on. K. Kanowski knows. It's over. I have to tell. I come over, talk this out. Jesus. You may want his number. Look at the dates. Todd took the Lake Springfield Bridge and the 94 exit with excess care. After the humiliation of confessing his sins, the string of missed calls from the Sangamon sheriffs, and the maddeningly ambiguous news that Kristen was both a person of interest and the victim of some mishap at the office wouldn't quite coalesce. The ringtone nearly caused him to go off the frontage road. He stabbed at the wheel. The voice from the dashboard was young, female, distant, solicitous, and yet something else. Are you lonely? Greedy Gary's ghosts. It was pitch black when Greedy Gary shuffled out of his house at 6 a.m. one freezing January morning. Everyone knew him as Greedy Gary because he loved his grub and ate massive portions of meat for every meal. Whether it was bacon buddies, burgers, fried chicken, or his personal favorite, lamb doner kebab, no salad, Greedy Gary lived for meat. Gary didn't love his nickname, but he'd grown tired of telling people off for using it. And deep down, Gary knew he was a bit greedy compared to others. But he wasn't doing anybody any harm. He set the engine running, then started de-icing the van. Gary was quite unfit, so was soon puffing hard from the effort. Despite only wearing t-shirt and shorts in the freezing temperatures, he was drenched in sweat as he heaved himself up into the cab. Once on the road, Gary decided that, as he'd just done some exercise already, an early breakfast was in order. So he pulled into his favorite lay-by pit stop, shook an angry fist at the long line of lorries, and parked a few hundred yards from where he wanted to. Greedy Gaza, mate. Usual, is it? Said the burger van man. A puffed-out Gary nodded in reply. 5 minutes later, Gary climbed back into his cab and placed the white tea with 3 in the cup holder, and a dinner plate-sized triple belly buster, sausage and bacon, BAP on the dashboard. Gary slurped the grease off his fingers, took the polystyrene cup in one hand, and licked his lips as a juicy, meaty aroma filled the cab. Wouldn't eat that if I were you, said a strange, squealing voice. Gary screamed, jumped a foot in the air, and launched hot tea over the windscreen. It took a moment to register what happened. Someone else was in the van with him. He took a tentative peek to his left. A see-through pig was sat there, grinning. Fright number 3042, snort, said the pig. Hello, Greedy Gary. So sorry. Not sorry to scare you. Gary's chins trembled. What the? Who the? What the? Who are you? I'm Kevin, snort, said Kevin the pig. Kevin? Yes, Kevin Bacon. Nice to meet you. Gary burst out laughing, and the whole van shook. Oh, nice one, nice one. This is one of them TV prank shows, innit? Kevin Blooming Bacon. Kevin turned his head to one side, observing this curious reaction. This isn't a TV show, Gary. Yeah, it is. You're one of them. Whatchamacallit, virtual thingies, right? You mean virtual reality? Gary beamed at how smart he was. Yeah, that's the one. Nice one. Proper got me. Kevin shook his head at how thick humans can be. I'm not a virtual reality pig from a TV show. I am the ghost of breakfasts past. Snort. Gary stopped laughing, raised an eyebrow, then quivered. Ghost? Gary didn't care much for ghosts. Yes, I'm dead. Butchered many moons ago, said Kevin, who flew out through the windscreen and back again to show that he really was a ghost. Gary's face turned as white as the empty foam cup in his hand. A ghost, pig? That talks? Yes, and as I was saying, I am the ghost of breakfasts past, snort, and I'm here to show you the error of your ways. Kevin narrowed his eyes in that way that talking dead pigs do when they need to be serious. Gary, 5 minutes ago, you became the official biggest meat eater in the world. Gary unclenched his butt cheeks just a little as curiosity got the better of him. Really? How come? The previous holder of that dubious title died about 5 minutes ago, said Kevin with a solemn shake of his head. Heart attack got him. Was only 36. Mexican fella. Chili Chico, they called him. Ate nothing for 20 years but beef and pork chili. Gary pumped his fist in the air. Yes, I'm a world record holder, wahoo. Kevin once again cocked his head and observed Gary's misplaced joy at benefiting from a young man's untimely demise. Gary had missed the message that Chili Chico was only 2 years older than him. Chico was a gentle soul who tried to listen to Kevin, but just couldn't change his ways in time. But this obnoxious, greedy Gary was something else. Perhaps Kevin's hardest case yet. It was time for something less subtle. So Kevin clicked his trotters and transported them both back to a vision of Gary's recent past. They were in the local hospital. Gary's eyes grew wider than his breakfast bap as he saw himself sprawled out on a bed with his loving wife, Stacy, crying by his side. Multiple cables connected his body to multiple machines. Gary remembered why he was there, how he had clutched his chest and collapsed at the cafe, how he never got to finish his third full English breakfast. You're lucky this time, said the doctor to patient Gary from the past. Take this as a warning shot. You must change your high-fat diet, eat less meat, and more fresh fruit and vegetables. I'm referring you to a specialist dietitian. The painful memory faded away, and Gary found himself back in his van, still accompanied by a talking see-through pig. You never saw the dietitian, did you, Gary? Said Kevin. You did not heed the warning, snort. Gary huffed. He was tired of being lectured. Right. I've had enough of your guilt-tripping, Mr. Kevin Blooming Bacon. So leave me alone, Mr. Ghost of Breakfasts Past, 'cause the only breakfast I care about is the one in front of my nose. So why don't you trot off and let me eat in peace? Gary scooped up the triple belly buster, brought it to his saliva-glistened lips, and opened his mouth as wide as London Tower Bridge. Gary, no, cried Kevin. Do you even know what that sausage is made of? Piggy guts and lips and bum holes. Guts and lips and bum holes, snort. "I know," said Gary, as he munched down on the many greasy layers of processed pig. Delicious. A single ghostly tear rolled down Kevin's pinkish cheek. And then he vanished. Gary shrugged, chucked the plastic cup out of the window onto the grass verge, then drove on to work. Finally, it was lunchtime, and greedy Gary was ravenous. At tea break earlier, when he'd opened up his snack box, he found that kind, sweet Stacy had packed 3 of his favorite sausage rolls. What a treat. But he couldn't bring himself to take a single bite. He hadn't really enjoyed all of his triple belly buster earlier, after the whole ghost of breakfast's past shenanigans. It didn't sit right, and not just in his stomach, and Gary worried that Kevin was angry with him. But that was ages ago, and now greedy Gary could eat a horse. So he hustled over to the on-site Porta-Cabin canteen. Greedy Gary. "Usual, me love?" asked the woman behind the counter. Gary nodded and rubbed his hands in glee. Some workmates called him to come and sit with them, but then Gary remembered Kevin. What if he comes back in front of everyone? So Gary took his mega cheese power tower burger that was as big as his thick head, stacked with 8 regular burgers and as many gooey slices of processed cheese, back to his digger to eat in peace. He opened his ginormous cake hole and "Wouldn't eat that if I were you," said a deep, slow voice. Gary froze. Not again. He lowered the basketball-sized burger, and his jaw dropped. The huge head of a see-through cow grinned at him. "Ah!" screamed Gary. He launched his burger like a grenade at the spooky intruder. But the greasy missile just sailed straight through and splattered cheesy beef all over the windscreen. "Well, that's no way to greet a lady," said the cow. "I'm Patty Moo." Gary's face went red with rage. "Well, Patty Moo, why don't you Patty do one? I'm getting sick of this." "You're getting sick of this?" said Patty. "You're getting sick of this? How dare you, Moo? I died to give you that burger. And then you literally throw it back in my face." Gary recoiled and squinted his eyes. "What did you say?" "I said I died to give you that burger. You were about to eat my mashed up rump. I am the ghost of lunch's present, Moo, and I'm here to show you the error of your ways." Gary didn't know what to say. His brain whirled with all the possibilities he could think of. All 2 of them. This new ghost could well be pulling his leg. The whole thing could be a massive wind-up or a TV prank show. But if not, "Nothing personal," said Gary. "A man's gotta eat." Then his chins started trembling again. "You're not going to eat me, are you?" Patty burst into deafening laughter. "Oh, nice one, Gary. Nice one. No, you don't look much like a tasty grass meadow. I think you're safe on that front, Moo." Then Patty lowered her long eyelashes in that way that talking dead cows do when they need to be serious. Do you ever think about where your food really comes from? Gary screwed up his face at the stupid question. It comes from whoever cooks it. Patty rolled her beautiful big eyes. But what about before that? For example, where do you think I came from? Some field, I suppose, said Gary. A cramped and dusty feed pen, actually, said Patty. I never got to eat grass, though I could see it growing just across the yard. To make your mega cheese power tower. Burger Gary, I was fattened up on corn, soy, and growth hormone drugs. Moo, Gary just shrugged. Tastes good though, don't it? Patty tilted her head to one side and thought about what to do with this particularly obnoxious and uncaring human. This was Patty's first assignment as the ghost of lunches present. And Kevin warned her she'd been thrown in the deep end with Gary. Patty was a cow who hadn't spent any time with humans yet, so she didn't really know what the pig meant. But she got the gist. It was time for something less subtle. So Patty clicked her hooves and transported them both to the Amazon rainforest, at least where much of it used to be. Dawn was just breaking in this part of the world, but instead of the sunlight beaming through the cracks of a lush, dense canopy, it rose in plain sight from the east horizon and lit up a barren, brown wasteland. There was nothing but bare earth as far as the eye could see. The land had been plowed into long columns that stretched onward into the distance, but nothing grew here yet. This land was dead. Gary's chins quivered like jelly. Where are we? Is this the afterlife, in a way? Yes, said Patty. We're in Brazil, present day. But just 1 year ago, on this very spot, ancient towering trees would have blocked the sky out, and all manner of creatures, now either fled or dead, called this unspoilt wilderness home, from mighty jaguars to endangered tree frogs and countless species of insects. Gary looked around again and imagined the scene that Patty described. He and Stacy enjoyed the odd nature documentary during their TV dinners. A strange sense of loss came over him. What happened here? Humans, moo. Humans came, with diggers 5 times bigger than your one, and flattened the rainforest. Soon they will plant soy here, endless miles upon miles of soybeans, to fatten up cattle around the world like me for cheap beef. The tragic scene faded away, and Gary found himself back in his digger, still accompanied by a talking, see-through cow. Patty's big, searching eyes looked deep into Gary's own, as if they were a window into his soul. So, Gary, now you know the cost of your extreme diet. Will you change it? Gary hung his head. It's not every day that you meet the cow you're about to eat. And he was genuinely moved by experiencing the devastation of the rainforest. He thought that cows just roamed lush green fields in the English countryside. He had no idea of the global impact of his massive meat-munching habit. But then, something had caught his attention. A smell. A most delicious smell. And his stomach rumbled. He caught sight of the mega cheese power tower, mess, on the dashboard. Without thinking, as if on autopilot, he shoved a huge fistful of greasy burger into his greedy gob. "Gary, no!" cried Patty. But Gary just kept on chewing and chewing, lost in this moment of taste satisfaction, like some oblivious, carnivorous beast. A single, ghostly tear rolled down Patty's nose, and then she vanished. Gary gasped at what he had done. "Patty, wait, I'm sorry." And some passing scaffolders gave him very weird looks indeed. After work, greedy Gary felt very glum, driving home in the pitch black, and more than a little worried about future visits from Kevin or Patty. A stream of befuddling questions raced through his mind. Can ghosts take revenge? Can they hurt or even kill someone? What will happen if I eat pork or beef again? His head felt fit to burst from all this thinking and conflicting feelings, and his heart ached with guilt and shame. He wasn't proud to be the biggest meat eater in the world anymore. He wanted to be greedy Gary, no longer. He just wanted to be Gary, and to live and eat normally, without causing all this pain and destruction. And then his stomach rumbled again, as if on cue to test his resolve, just as he passed his favorite fried chicken shop. "Perfect. No red meat," said Gary, as he parked up outside. "Greedy Gary, my very best customer," called out the chicken shop man. "Usual, is it?" Gary considered the menu carefully. "Just one super-size bone lickin' bucket today, please. I'm on a diet. Good for you, my friend. And great choice. Chicken is so healthy." Gary climbed back into his van and placed the 20 bits of battered bird on the passenger seat. Pulling back onto the road, he reached across with a greedy hand. "Wouldn't do that if I were you, Squawk," said a screechy voice beside him. Gary's heart sunk, and his chins trembled faster than ever. Stood atop that mountain of deep-fried food was a rather angry-looking see-through hen. Gary couldn't speak, so the chicken did. "I'm prisoner 1,000,005. The ghost of dinners yet to come, Squawk. And I'm here to show you the error of your ways." This bird had read Kevin and Patty's reports on Gary. The time for being nice was over, so she clicked her beak and transported him to the hell she knew all too well. Gary screamed, or rather squawked. Countless chickens and their poo surrounded him. The awful din and stench was overwhelming. He seemed rather small as well, or these hens were human-sized. His vision was weird and intense. Bright colors flooded his mind from every angle. The great mass of birds crushed and pecked him, each fighting for space and air. He looked down at his own spindly chicken feet and let out the most terrifying squawk. He couldn't talk. He couldn't breathe. Then one big old bird bundled him over, and another fell full onto his leg. Crack! Gary the chicken squawked in agony and knew this was the end for him. This was the animal ghost's payback. Then the frightful vision faded away, and greedy Gary was back in his digger, and human once more. He felt his sweating face and leg. No beak, no break. It was just a dream. A vision. Where was that? He said to the fierce-looking ghost of dinners yet to come. A nearby intensive chicken meat factory. 1 year from now, after you and your workmates have finished building it. The color from Gary's face drained, and he wept giant tears of shame. Please, oh gracious ghost of dinners yet to come, please give me another chance. I'll stop working there. I'll make them all stop. I will. And, said the ghostly hen. I'll stop eating meat, I promise. I swear it on my life. The ghost of dinners yet to come smiled, just a little. You had better keep those promises, Gary. We will be watching, squawk. And then she vanished. Gary threw the supersize bone-lickin' bucket in the nearest bin and drove home as quickly as he could. Greedy Gary breathed an enormous sigh of relief as he opened his front door. He couldn't wait for a big hug from his lovely wife. Oh, hello, love, called Stacy. I've got your favorite for dinner. 4 lamb doner kebabs, no salad. Gary screamed and ran away as fast as he could. He hadn't sprinted since he was a young boy, but the fear propelled him on. His heart pounded, his legs throbbed, but on he ran down his street, all the way to the corner shop. And there, in that moment, Gary did something he'd never done before in his whole life. He brought some vegetables. Well, a tin of baked beans. But we've all got to start somewhere.